Russia threatens to exterminate foreign fighters in Ukraine after expanded attacks and nuclear rupture, allies under extreme panic. The war in Ukraine took another dangerous turn. Russia expanded its attacks, broke nuclear agreements, and directly threatened the West. Putin claimed he found British and French soldiers fighting on the front lines, and this isn't the first time it's happened. Last year, a British unit was bombed on Ukrainian soil. Neither Putin nor the UK government spoke about it, likely to avoid triggering a world war. Now Moscow has intensified its bombings and vowed to eliminate NATO soldiers fighting alongside Kyiv. Europe shows deep divisions, conflict at global scale with Burevestnik tested, economies under military pressure across markets today. Meanwhile, new political and military alliances are forming in Europe, revealing divisions among countries once united. Orban announced he's against Ukraine. Even so, the United States and its allies try to contain Putin with sanctions and weapons, while Russia bets on nuclear power and territorial expansion. From the destruction of dams and blackouts in Kharkiv to the Burevestnik missile test, everything suggests the conflict has already gone beyond Ukraine's borders. The war has become global, fought not only on battlefields but also through economies and military laboratories. Nuclear tension dominates the global stage, with Xi over Putin and Trump scrutinized, response undefined, and consequences ahead. If Russia crosses the nuclear line and the West responds, the planet could face its final days. Yet neither Putin nor the West has declared world war. Could Xi Jinping be the one stopping Putin to protect China's economy? And on the Western side, who's holding Trump back? Just a reminder, this report is based on news from Sky News, The New York Times, BBC, The Guardian, Al Jazeera, Sputnik, RT News, and Telegram. But before we get into the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription means a lot and helps you stay updated on every story about the raging nations. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up to help this project grow even more. Russia warned it will eliminate soldiers from NATO countries fighting in Ukraine after hearing English and French voices on the front. Moscow accuses NATO nations of sending disguised mercenaries and vows to hunt them down as direct enemies. According to the Kremlin, this changes the entire course of the war. Dmitry Peskov confirmed that Russian soldiers received clear orders to eliminate any foreign fighters found. The problem is that intelligence services believe this could soon happen inside NATO territory and be dismissed as an accident. Russian forces are advancing through eastern Ukraine, fighting across more than 1,000 kilometers of front. Reports indicate Kyiv is suffering heavy losses in Donetsk and Zaporizhia as Russian missiles destroy weapons depots and vital supply lines. Former CIA analysts say Moscow gained an edge after consolidating logistical control in the south. With winter approaching, Russia bets on outlasting Kyiv, using energy and constant bombings to wear down Ukrainian morale and weaken the country's ability to fight back. The Kremlin declared it will respond with precision nuclear weapons if attacked by the United States or NATO. The warning makes the world hold its breath, as one mistake could turn a regional conflict into a direct war between nuclear superpowers. Kremlin orders elimination of foreigners. Eastern advance consolidated with explicit nuclear threat against the United States and NATO. Putin said he will not bow to sanctions or Western pressure. He promised to boost military production and focus on strategic deterrence. According to him, Washington manipulates the war to weaken Russia and destroy its sovereignty. Tensions are rising fast. The Russian government officially confirmed its withdrawal from the nuclear control treaty with the United States. Putin signed the decree ending years of cooperation on inspections and warheads. Moscow claims the treaty no longer served the country's strategic interests. With the treaty gone, Western analysts warn of a new arms race. The decision opens the door for intercontinental missile tests and reduces control over active warheads. Washington called it a direct threat to global security and nuclear balance. Russia has increased missile tests and reinforced its naval bases in the Arctic. The Defense Ministry announced submarine upgrades and mass production of kamikaze drones. The goal is to prevent any NATO advance near Russian borders and keep the country ready for a full offensive. Putin authorized new operations in the east and warned that countries sending troops to help Kyiv will face unpredictable consequences. Tensions have reached a new high. Experts say the world is entering its most dangerous days since the start of the invasion. Putin breaks nuclear control, military industry expanding, strategic tests intensified, and severe warnings against imminent Western interventions ahead. A Ukrainian attack destroyed part of a dam controlled by Russia, blocking routes used to transport ammunition. Moscow accused Kyiv of environmental extremism, while engineers rushed to contain leaks threatening entire cities. Chaos in the north grew even worse. In the Kharkiv region, Russian attacks left thousands without power. Hospitals and shelters run on improvised generators. Local authorities say Moscow targets civilian infrastructure, but the Kremlin insists it only hits military sites. The cold makes the tragedy worse. Ukraine announced a new international coalition to strengthen the supply of weapons and air defense systems. European countries pledged support, and Washington is rushing to approve long-range missiles. Kyiv wants to prove it still has strength and allies willing to back the war. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused the West of pushing the world toward a great European war. The statement sounded like a threat and echoed across diplomatic forums. Moscow wants to prove sanctions don't work and that NATO fears a direct confrontation. As missiles cross the sky and cities remain dark, fear grows that the war will spread. Ukraine's next offensives could change everything. Behind closed doors, diplomats are working to prevent the conflict from turning into a continental disaster, but time is running out. Attacks destroy a dam and power in Kharkiv. Armed coalition formed and Lavrov ascendant. Borders under immediate risk. Russia repositioned its troops after the dam's destruction and strengthened defenses in Belgorod and Kursk. Military sources report more tanks and missile launchers. The Kremlin is preparing a large-scale response, calculating both political and energy impacts. Satellites recorded strong explosions in Russian-controlled areas. Ukrainian bombs hit fuel depots and military convoys. Moscow promised retaliation but avoided admitting losses. Observers say Russia's next strikes will be heavy and well-coordinated. The war reaches its third winter, and exhaustion is visible. Ukrainian soldiers complain about lack of equipment, while Russians report logistical failures. The battle is now also for morale and supplies. Without them, neither side can maintain the pace of combat. European powers are increasing diplomatic pressure on Moscow after new bombings against civilians. Brussels plans tougher sanctions, and the G7 wants to seize frozen Russian assets. Russia responds by threatening to cut gas supplies, reigniting fears of an energy blackout. With Kharkiv under attack and Lavrov talking about a continental war, fear of global escalation grows. Experts warn that if NATO intervenes, Moscow could resort to tactical nuclear weapons. What happens next will determine whether the war stays regional or engulfs the continent. Russia reinforces borders after recorded explosions, Europe with tough sanctions, and experts on alert for tactical nuclear use. Zelensky admitted that Ukraine will need European support for another 2 or 3 years to keep resisting. He spoke about the lack of resources and troop fatigue, warning that without this help, the country could face military collapse and lose what remains. Italy broke from the optimistic narrative, saying Kiev will not regain the occupied territories. The defense minister urged the European Union to rethink the war and seek diplomatic exits. Rome fears the prolonged conflict could destroy entire economies and destabilize the continent. Going against the tide, Hungary is trying to build a front within the European Union against more aid to Ukraine. Viktor Orban wants to revive an alliance similar to the Visegrad Group, uniting countries opposed to sanctions and willing to negotiate energy directly with Moscow. Orban's stance angered Brussels and Berlin, which support maintaining aid to Kiev. The Hungarian leader accuses Europe of following US orders and says the continent is paying a high price for a war it cannot win. Political division keeps growing. With Europe divided, Ukraine's fate has become uncertain. Some insist on supporting Zelensky, while others see the war as an endless economic pit. Upcoming decisions on sanctions and funding will determine whether Kyiv keeps fighting or is forced to stop. Zelensky demands prolonged support. With Italy skeptical and Hungary mobilizing, financial decisions will define Ukrainian continuity under pressure. Even with Europe's fatigue, Ukraine's government tries to project confidence. Zelensky insists victory depends on Western unity and keeps asking Paris and Berlin for weapons and funds. Analysts warn that political exhaustion may prove deadlier than any bomb. Europe's streets are starting to feel the weight of the war. Protests spread across major capitals against rising costs and military spending. Many want the money to stay at home, not fund tanks. The crisis has become part of daily European life. While allies argue, Moscow takes advantage to expand its influence. Russia offers cheap gas and bilateral deals to countries questioning sanctions. It's a political move that further divides the European Union and weakens pressure on the Kremlin. Despite sanctions, Europe still depends on Russian gas, which remains the bloc's main weakness. The Kremlin uses supply as a weapon, adjusting prices and flows to pressure countries hesitant to support Kyiv. It's pure energy blackmail. With Ukraine exhausted and Europe divided, fears are growing of a long stalemate. Diplomats say Moscow could use the time to rearm and strengthen its positions. If that happens, the war may enter a frozen phase with no victory or peace for many years. Europe faces mass protests. With Russian energy influence and dependence, prolonged stalemate predicted and positions hardened without progress. US intelligence services concluded that Moscow has no interest in negotiations. They believe Putin thinks he's winning militarily and that stepping back now would show weakness. This assessment reinforces the outlook of a long war with no room for peace talks. A confidential report shared with NATO leaders confirmed what was already feared. The conflict has entered a phase of total exhaustion. Washington believes Putin will only stop if defeated. US diplomacy is now searching for new ways to pressure Moscow. Trump once again provoked controversy by claiming he keeps nuclear submarines near Russia as a show of strength. The statement sparked backlash in Moscow, which ordered increased naval surveillance in the North Atlantic. The next steps may define the limits of this provocation. Reports reveal warnings to Trump, with Russia unyielding and NATO under pressure, surveillance after mention of submarines. The Pentagon avoided commenting, but analysts note that Ohio-class submarines patrol continuously. Each carries 20 Trident missiles with multiple nuclear warheads. The mere presence of these vessels increases the risk of incidents and dangerous misunderstandings between powers. In Europe, intelligence services fear US political rhetoric could fuel strategic missteps. Analysts warn that in an election climate, any poorly calculated speech could lead to impulsive military decisions and increase the risk of direct conflict. Meanwhile, the Kremlin takes advantage of Trump's remarks to reinforce the narrative that NATO is trying to encircle Russia. Russian propaganda uses these statements to justify expanding its arsenal and accelerating air defense and long-range missile programs. Ukrainian intelligence services detected a major increase in Russian espionage across Eastern Europe. Agents are trying to uncover arms routes and air defense plans. This information war has become an invisible but decisive front in determining who sets the pace of the conflict. Western countries have increased cooperation among agencies to counter cyber attacks and Russian infiltrations. Experts say digital warfare now weighs as much as the battlefield. Whoever controls data and networks can win without firing a shot. Ohio submarine patrol scares Europe. With American rhetoric elevated, Russian espionage intensified and coordinated cyber defense expanding today. Zelensky said Ukrainian attacks reduced Russia's oil refining capacity by 20%. Moscow confirmed damage to key facilities but downplayed the impact. Western sanctions are tightening the noose around Russia's energy sector. The Russian giant Lukoil is considering selling international assets after new sanctions from the United States and the United Kingdom. The move shows how cornered the country is and how increasingly dependent it has become on Asian markets, mainly China and India, to survive. The drop in Russian oil production is already affecting the whole world. Experts say the price per barrel could surpass $90 if the war continues. Europe is rushing to keep reserves full and fears facing another energy collapse in the middle of winter. Economists call oil Putin's Achilles heel. The drop in energy revenue threatens the military budget and pressures the government. To compensate, Moscow increases secret exports through the Caspian Sea, using unflagged ships and routes that evade sanctions. As the energy crisis deepens, fears are growing of Russian sabotage against Western infrastructure. Authorities warn of possible attacks on gas pipelines and power grids. What happens now will show whether this economic war turns into an open energy conflict. Ukrainian strikes reduce Russian refining, Lukoil under international pressure, oil prices surging, Western infrastructure under threat right now. Putin announced that Russia successfully tested the Burevestnik missile powered by nuclear propulsion. The weapon was designed to evade radar and cross continents undetected. It's the kind of technology that puts the country on another military level and keeps the West on alert. This missile, called Skyfall by Nato, has virtually unlimited range and can change course mid-flight. Experts say it can stay in the air for days, dodging any missile defense. The successful test left Western intelligence services deeply concerned. Analysts say the Burevestnik is part of Putin's so-called doomsday weapons. Alongside it, Russia invests in Poseidon underwater drones and avant-garde hypersonic missiles. The goal is clear: ensure that any attack against the country ends in the enemy's total destruction. The Ministry of Defense released footage of the launch conducted in a remote Arctic region. According to the statement, the test was a total success, meeting all range and stability parameters. Meanwhile, US satellites continue monitoring every detail of the operation. The Burevestnik represents more than a military advance. It symbolizes the end of nuclear limitation treaties and the start of a new technological race between Russia and the United States. Experts say the global balance of power has just shifted, and not for the better. Burevestnik demonstrates unlimited range, with apocalyptic arsenal in focus, Arctic launch released, and treaties collapsing in succession worldwide. The war continues without pause, and neither side seems willing to stop. Moscow strengthens its positions, Kiev relies on increasingly weary allies, and the world watches an escalation that seems irreversible. The atmosphere is one of constant tension. With the energy crisis and nuclear race speeding up, diplomacy has lost ground. Sanctions and sabotage have replaced dialogue, and any mistake now could trigger a global catastrophe. A single miscalculation could change history entirely. Experts say the conflict has entered a dangerous phase where no one talks about peace anymore, only survival. Espionage, cyber warfare, and covert attacks define this new stage where borders have vanished and everything has become a battlefield. The world is reliving old mistakes, only on a much larger scale. The end of treaties and the rise of new weapons show that the 21st century may face what the past only feared: a direct confrontation between nuclear superpowers. Relentless escalation keeps diplomacy absent. Digital warfare behind scenes and nuclear risk at peak, response uncertain and silent. If Russia crosses the nuclear line and the West responds, the planet could face its final days. Yet neither Putin nor the West has declared a world war. Could it be Xi Jinping holding Putin back to protect China's economy? And on the Western side, who's holding back Trump? Thanks so much for sticking around until the end of the video. You're awesome, and I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any updates on the raging nations. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up to help this project grow even more.